All right, so you wanted to dive into the history of organized crime in America.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we found a story, and it is fascinating and baffling all at the same time.
Oh, really?
It's about this guy, Frank Matthews.
Okay.
Now, you might not recognize the name, but trust me, his story,
Yeah.
it's like straight out of a movie, A powerful drug lord
Right.
built this massive empire, made a ton of money,
Mm-hmm.
and then, poof, vanished without a trace.
Wow.
Took millions of dollars with him.
Oh, wow.
Millions.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we're talking like real Scarface kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes this Frank Matthews case so fascinating,
I see. Yeah.
It's not just a crime story. It's a window into a very specific moment in American history, really.
Oh, okay.
The late 60s, early 70s.
Interesting.
This was when all those traditional mafia families, the ones you see in the movies,
Right.
they were starting to see their power challenged,
Right.
right? And ambitious figures, guys like Matthews, they were ready to step into that void.
Yeah, I can see that. So before we get into this whole mysterious disappearance, let's back up a bit.
Yeah.
Who was Frank Matthews, and how did he rise to power?
Right. So he starts out in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay.
What was his early life like?
Well, it definitely wasn't a life of privilege, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Some run-ins with the law, even as a teenager, actually.
Really?
Yeah. He even spent some time in juvie
Wow.
for assault.
Oh, wow.
It seems like even back then, he had this daring, this willingness to kind of bend the rules a little.
Yeah, push it, right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it seems like those tendencies, they kind of followed him north.
Right.
First to Philadelphia, then to Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like each move he took, each stop he made, it took him higher and higher up the criminal ladder.
Yeah.
So our sources say that he got his start in this world of numbers running. Can you explain what that is?
Sure, yeah. Numbers running, sometimes they called it the numbers game.
Okay.
It was an illegal lottery, basically. Really popular in a lot of urban communities.
Oh, okay.
People could gamble small amounts of money and, they hope to win a bigger payout,
So kind of a precursor to the lottery we have today.
Exactly, yeah.
But run by these criminal organizations.
Yeah, basically. And it was a lucrative business, especially in those densely populated areas like Brooklyn.
Right.
And that's where he really began to hone his skills as an organizer,
Yeah.
building this network of runners and collectors.
Right.
But he was clearly a man with, bigger ambitions.
Yeah.
He realized pretty quickly the limitations of the numbers game.
Yeah.
So he set his sights on something much more lucrative,
Yeah.
the drug trade.
The drug world. And our sources describe a pretty rapid rise to power for him in this world.
It was.
Right. He starts dealing heroin and he connects with some real heavy hitters in that Philadelphia underworld.
He did.
Guys like Major Coxon, notorious gangster.
Yeah.
And members of this so-called Black Mafia.
Right.
Can you tell us a little more about the Black Mafia and their role in organized crime at the time?
Sure. The Black Mafia was this loosely organized group, African-American criminals.
Okay.
And they operated all over the U.S., various cities,
Yeah.
mainly involved in, drug trafficking, extortion, gambling.
Right.
And they emerged partly because of those racial barriers that they faced, within the traditional mafia families.
Right. So even in the criminal underworld,
Yeah,
there was segregation and a struggle for control.
absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah. And Matthews, being an ambitious, savvy operator, he recognized this.
Yeah.
Saw an opportunity there,
Right.
to build his own empire, independent of the mafia.
Right. And it seems like he tried to play the game, at least initially, right? Our sources say he reached out to some of the big mafia families in New York,
Mm-hmm.
the Gambinos, the Bonanos,
Right.
but they weren't really interested in a full partnership with him.
Well, the rejection, that was a turning point for Matthews, really.
Right.
It solidified his determination, to build his own power base.
Yeah.
Completely independent.
Right. So what did he do? Where did he find the connections, the supply to kind of launch his own operation?
Well, he found a key partner in this guy, Rolando Lucas Gonzalez Nunez,
Okay.
a Cuban mafia boss.
Okay.
Now, the Cuban mafia, that was another force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
They had strong connections in South America, which was a major source of cocaine and heroin at the time.
So this partnership gave Matthews direct access to the source.
Yes.
He was able to bypass those mafia middlemen. That's a big deal.
Huge. It allowed him to control the entire supply chain, importation, distribution.
Right.
Meant bigger profits.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Less reliance on anybody else.
Right. And he set up these incredibly sophisticated drug mills.
He did.
In Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Heavily fortified.
Yeah.
Guards armed to the teeth.
And we're not talking about some small-time operation.
Right.
I mean, one source describes a raid where they seized enough heroin to supply the entire East Coast for weeks.
Wow. So this guy was not just some back alley drug dealer.
No, no, no.
We're talking about a major...
He was. And Matthews wasn't shy about flaunting his success either.
Right, of course not.
I mean, he lived this lavish lifestyle, mansion on Staten Island.
Oh, wow.
A fleet of luxury cars,
Yeah,
frequent trips to Las Vegas for, gambling, money laundering.
A mansion on Staten Island. That's pretty close to where some of the big mob bosses lived, right?
It was, yeah. Some people saw that as a deliberate power play.
Right.
Like he was saying, hey, I'm here, I'm successful, and I'm not afraid of you.
Come and get me.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's got this growing empire, this life of luxury. Did he ever try and legitimize his business? Or was he always firmly in the criminal underworld?
No, there's no evidence that he ever seriously considered going legit.
Really?
Actually, it seems like his ambition went way beyond just running a successful criminal enterprise.
Right.
He wanted to, reshape the entire drug trade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he started organizing these summits, bringing together major Black and Hispanic drug dealers from all over the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he's essentially trying to create this new power structure, one that challenges the dominance of these traditional mafia families.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Wow.
He envisioned this, network of independent drug lords.
Okay.
All working together to control the flow of narcotics into the U.S. It was a bold plan, audacious, and it put him directly in the crosshairs of some very, very dangerous people.
Well, I'm guessing that's where things start to get real complicated, right?
Yeah.
And maybe even dangerous for Frank Matthews.
You got it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll dive into the escalating tensions and the eventual downfall of this incredibly ambitious and maybe reckless drug lord.
Can't wait.
Stay with us.
So Frank Matthews, he's building this massive drug empire, living large, and he's got this ambitious plan to kind of reshape the entire drug trade.
Right.
But, like you were saying, that's going to put him in some dangerous territory.
Oh, yeah. He was making a lot of enemies along the way.
Right.
Not just the traditional mafia families that he was trying to bypass, but, rival gangs.
Right.
Even some of his own associates.
Right.
People who might have been tempted by his success.
Yeah. I mean, our sources point to one group in particular that became a major problem for Matthews.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Black Mafia.
Yeah.
They were already a powerful force in the drug world, and they weren't just going to sit back and watch Matthews muscle in on their territory.
Well, remember, this is a time when the drug trade is becoming increasingly violent.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of different factions all vying for control.
Right. And they weren't afraid to use force to get what they wanted.
Right. And things really came to a head with this infamous Easter Sunday shootout in Atlantic City in 1972.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like something straight out of a gangster movie.
It was a wild scene.
Really?
An Atlantic City nightclub, packed with people, celebrating Easter Sunday.
Wow.
Suddenly, gunfire erupts.
Oh, wow.
This wild shootout between Matthews' organization and the Philadelphia Black Mafia.
What sparked the violence?
Well,
Was it a planned hit? Or did things just kind of spiral out of control?
the exact trigger is still a little murky,
Okay.
but it's clear that tensions have been building between those two groups for some time.
Mm-hmm.
They were competing for control of lucrative drug routes, distribution networks.
Right.
There was a lot of bad blood between them.
Yeah. I mean, this shootout had a huge impact, right?
Well, yeah, it did.
Not just on the people involved, but I mean, on Matthews' reputation, his ability to operate freely.
It really did. 5 people were killed in that shootout.
Oh, yeah.
Another 26 injured. Many of them innocent bystanders just caught in the crossfire.
Wow. And it's almost unbelievable, but despite the large number of witnesses, no one came forward to testify against either group.
That's right.
So it really shows the power these organizations had, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the fear that they instilled in people.
Absolutely. Even in the face of such a horrific event, people were too scared to speak up.
Wow.
It also speaks to the code of silence that just permeated the criminal underworld. That loyalty to the organization and the deep distrust of law enforcement. I mean, it made people reluctant to cooperate with authorities.
Yeah.
Even if it meant protecting those responsible for violence.
So the Easter Sunday shootout was a major turning point in the story of Frank Matthews.
It really was.
It showed just how violent the drug trade was and how difficult it would be for him to achieve his ambitions without making some really powerful enemies.
Yeah. It also exposed him to increased scrutiny from law enforcement.
Right.
I mean, that shootout brought unwanted attention to his operations, and the authorities were starting to close in.
Yeah. Our sources mentioned that Matthews had some close calls with the law even before the shootout.
He did.
Apparently, he was almost busted in a major heroin deal that went wrong with, of all people, the Genovese crime family, one of the most powerful mafia families in New York.
That's right. It seems Matthews had agreed to buy a large quantity of heroin from an associate of the Genovese family.
Okay.
But the deal went south. The associate took Matthews' money and fled to the Bahamas.
Wait, so Matthews got scammed by the mafia?
Yeah.
That's kind of ironic considering he was trying to break free from their control.
It does seem a bit ironic, doesn't it? But, it just shows that even someone as powerful and connected as Matthews wasn't immune to the double-crossing and treachery that was commonplace in the underworld.
Right. So what did Matthews do? Did he just kind of cut his losses and move on?
Well, not exactly. Matthews wasn't the kind of guy to let someone walk away with his money.
Right.
Especially not someone connected to the mafia. He retaliated by kidnapping the associate's bodyguard.
Wow. That's a pretty bold move.
Yeah.
Kidnapping someone connected to the Genovese family. I mean, that's asking for trouble.
It was definitely a risky move,
Oh.
but it worked. The kidnapping put enough pressure on the associate that he eventually returned to the U.S., gave Matthews his money back, and delivered the heroin as promised.
So Matthews managed to salvage the deal and even kind of turn the tables on the mafia?
Yeah, he did.
But this whole episode probably didn't do him any favors with the law enforcement agencies that were already keeping a close eye on him.
You're right. The DEA was building a case against Matthews.
Right.
They were using all the tools at their disposal, undercover agents, informants,
Right.
and most importantly, wiretaps.
Those wiretaps must have been a goldmine of information for the DEA.
They were. The agents were listening in on Matthews' conversations, gathering evidence of his drug deals, his money laundering operations, his connections to other criminal figures. I mean, it was only a matter of time before they had enough to bring him down.
And that's exactly what happened in January of '73, right?
Yep. Matthews was arrested at the Las Vegas airport. Initially, he was held on a $5 million bail.
Wow.
Which was an astronomical sum at the time.
Yeah.
It just shows how seriously the authorities were taking his case.
$5 million. That's a king's ransom. He must have some serious resources to even think about making bail.
Oh, he did. His bail was eventually reduced to $325,000, which he was able to pay. He was released pending trial, scheduled to appear in court on July 2nd, 1973.
So he's out on bail, facing serious charges. Trial is looming. What happened next? Did he show up in court and fight the charges?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because on July 2nd, 1973, Frank Matthews vanished. He didn't show up for his court appearance, and he hasn't been seen since.
He just disappeared, like completely off the grid.
Completely.
Yeah.
Gone without a trace. And to make things even more intriguing, he took an estimated $20 million in cash with him.
So the drug lord who built this incredible empire, who outsmarted the mafia, who is facing serious prison time, he just pulled a vanishing act.
Yeah.
Taking a fortune with him. It's almost too perfect, like something out of Hollywood script.
It is a story that betters belief, and that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
The mystery of Frank Matthews' disappearance and the theories about what might have happened to him.
Okay, so we've got this larger-than-life figure, Frank Matthews, who built this drug empire, challenged the mafia, and then just when it seems like, the walls are closing in, he pulls off this incredible disappearing act.
Right. I mean, it's almost too good to be true.
It is. Did he really manage to escape and start a new life? Or is there a darker truth lurking beneath the surface?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The mystery of Frank Matthews' disappearance, it's fueled speculation for decades. We've gone through all the research you sent, and there are a few prevailing theories, each with its own set of intriguing possibilities and unanswered questions.
Right. So let's start with what seems like the most obvious theory escape. Did Frank Matthews use his wealth and connections to vanish into thin air and build a new life for himself somewhere far away?
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, especially considering the resources he had at his disposal.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a man who was earning millions of dollars, had connections all over the world,
Yeah.
and he clearly wasn't afraid to take risks.
Right. And there were rumors circulating for years.
Huh?
Sightings in different countries, whispers of him living the high life under a new identity.
Right, yeah, some sources mentioned possible sightings in South America,
Yeah.
Europe, even Africa.
Wow.
There were stories of him resurfacing in the Caribbean, living a life of luxury, surrounded by beautiful women, far removed from the reach of the law.
So it's almost like a modern-day pirate tale. The outlaw who escapes with his treasure and lives out his days on some tropical island.
It's a romantic image, for sure. But so far, none of these sightings has ever been confirmed.
Really?
No concrete evidence has ever emerged to prove that Matthews is actually alive and well, living under an assumed name.
So the escape theory is intriguing, but it's also pretty flimsy, right?
Yeah,
No solid proof, just rumors and speculation.
right.
What about the darker side of things?
Hmm.
Is there any evidence that points to foul play?
Well, given the world Matthews operated in, it's certainly a possibility that can't be ignored.
Right.
He crossed some very powerful people, mafia families, rival gangs, even people within his own organization
Right.
who might have seen an opportunity to take over.
Eliminating Matthews would have been a way to eliminate a major competitor.
Mm-hmm.
Send a chilling message to anyone else thinking of challenging the status quo.
Exactly. And let's not forget that $20 million in cash he disappeared with.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's a powerful motive right there.
It is. So who are the most likely suspects if we're looking at this foul play angle?
Well, the Philadelphia Black Mafia certainly had a score to settle with Matthews
Right.
after the Easter Sunday shootout.
Right.
I mean, they had the means, the motive
Yeah.
to take him out.
Right.
And there were rumors that Matthews had made some enemies within the Cuban Mafia as well.
But wouldn't those groups want to make a statement?
Mhm.
If they killed Frank Matthews, wouldn't they want everyone to know it was them?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Sometimes, in the world of organized crime, the best way to eliminate a threat is to make it look like they just vanished.
Right.
No body, no evidence, no problem.
That's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
It's like he was erased from existence? A ghost story in the annals of organized crime?
And then there's the possibility that someone close to Matthews might have betrayed him.
Right.
A trusted lieutenant,
Mm-hmm.
disgruntled associate, someone who saw a chance to seize power and wealth for themselves.
It's like something out of Shakespeare. The ambitious underling who betrays his master for a chance at the throne. But if that's the case, where's the evidence?
Right.
Wouldn't there be some trace of what happened to Matthews?
Well, it's possible that his body was disposed of in a way that left no trace.
Right.
Or maybe there are people out there who know the truth but have stayed silent all these years,
Right.
bound by fear or loyalty.
So we've got escape, we've got foul play.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other theories out there that might explain what happened to Frank Matthews?
There's one more theory, and it might be the most intriguing of all. Some people believe that Matthews might have struck a deal with the authorities.
You mean he turned informant?
Exactly.
Traded his knowledge of the criminal underworld for a chance to disappear and start a new life.
That's right. It's possible that Matthews, facing some serious prison time, decided to cut a deal with the DEA or the FBI. He had a lot of information about the drug trade,
Yeah.
the mafia,
Yeah.
corrupt officials, information that would be incredibly valuable to law enforcement.
So in this scenario, Matthews is living under a new identity, protected by the very people who are trying to put him behind bars. It's a pretty wild twist.
It is.
Yeah.
And it would explain why he was able to disappear so completely and why no one has ever been able to find him.
But if he did turn informant, why haven't we heard anything about it?
Right.
Wouldn't some of that information have come out over the years?
Maybe. Or maybe the authorities are still protecting him, keeping his new identity a closely guarded secret
Right.
for their own reasons.
So what's the bottom line? After all this research, all these theories, are we any closer to solving the mystery of Frank Matthews?
Unfortunately, no. The truth remains elusive. We've got these tantalizing clues, intriguing possibilities, but no definitive answers. Frank Matthews' disappearance remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the history of organized crime.
What a story. I mean, it's a real-life thriller, complete with ambition, betrayal, vast sums of money, and an ending that leaves us hanging. It really makes you wonder, What really happened to Frank Matthews? Did he escape and live out his days in some exotic locale? Was he silenced by his enemies, his body buried in some unmarked grave? Or did he strike a deal with the devil, trading his freedom for a life in the shadows? We may never know for sure. But one thing's for certain, the story of Frank Matthews is a powerful reminder of the allure and the danger of the criminal underworld. A world where fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye, and where the line between success and ruin is razor thin. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mystery of Frank Matthews. We hope you enjoyed it, and maybe even learned a thing or two along the way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop searching for the truth, no matter how elusive it may be.
Yeah.